Last year, the Tesla Model Y was the best-selling car in the entire world. And it isn't hard to see why, because this is an electric car that offers a long range, a practical interior, and unrestricted access to Tesla's brilliant supercharger network. But what if you could have an even longer range and better efficiency for less money? Well, now you can, because this new version offers exactly that. In this review, I'm going to be telling you everything you need to know about it and finding out how efficient it really is in normal driving. So stay watching and don't forget to subscribe for lots more new car reviews, reveals and road trips. Now, if you've heard there's a brand new Model Y on the horizon and you're hoping that this is it, well, it isn't. There is a new version, it's codenamed Juniper, and later on in this video, I'll be telling you everything we know about this car so far, including the changes that we'd make if we were part of Tesla's design team. So what exactly do we have here then? Well, this is effectively the same Model Y that's been on sale in the UK since late 2021. It's just been made more efficient than before. So efficient, in fact, that Tesla claims this sets a new benchmark among electric SUVs. And it's that improved efficiency that gives it a longer range between charges, because it has exactly the same 75 kilowatt hour usable capacity battery that we've seen in the long range all-wheel drive version of the Model Y for years. Now, you might be wondering, how does it achieve this better efficiency? Does it have improved aerodynamics to help it cut through the air better? Or does it have more energy efficient electric motors? Well, actually, it's a bit simpler than that, because until now, the all-wheel drive version of the Model Y, in the UK at least, has only been available with all-wheel drive. So it's had one electric motor on the front axle here and another one driving the rear wheels. Essentially, all Tesla has done is remove this front motor here. That's reduced weight, of course, but also energy consumption. And it means that the long-range rear-wheel drive version of the Model Y has an official range of 373 miles. That's 41 miles further than the all-wheel drive version and a whopping 89 miles further than the standard range rear-wheel drive. In fact, 373 miles is only 18 miles behind the range offered by the Model 3 long range, although it isn't quite class-leading among electric SUVs, because the new Renault Scenic can officially do up to 379 miles. And if you want to see exactly how far that car can go in the real world, click up there at the top to watch our 2024 summer range test. But to get some idea of the real world range and efficiency of this new updated Model Y, I have come up with a cunning plan. So we are currently plugged into a supercharger near Heathrow Terminal 2, and when the battery gets to 80%, I'm going to head up to Bicester Village for some lunch. From there, we'll loop back into London on the A41 and we'll finish up at another supercharger at Brent Cross. When we get there, we'll charge the battery back up to 80%, we'll crunch some numbers and we'll work out the average efficiency for the trip and also a realistic range for this car in normal driving. Okay, so we're on the M40 at the moment, and that gives me a chance to talk about one of this car's biggest shortcomings, and that's refinement, because there's a lot of road noise at 70 miles an hour, and also it's a bit of an echo chamber in here because there are thumps from the suspension as it tries to deal with imperfections in the road, and they reverberate around the interior. Now, you might have noticed I said the suspension tries to deal with bumps, because the truth is it doesn't do a particularly great job of that. Early versions of the Model Y that made it to the UK were particularly bad for ride comfort, and some of the models that we've driven since have been better. Not brilliant, but not terrible. This version, though, really isn't very good at all. It's particularly bad around town, but even on the motorway when you're doing 70 miles an hour, you're jostled around. Any little bump in the road has the rear end hopping around, and frankly, it's just quite annoying. Now, whether that's because the suspension has been retuned to take into account the reduced weight over the nose, or whether this is just a Friday afternoon car, I'm really not sure. But what I can say is that there are far, far more comfortable electric SUVs to choose from, including cars like the new Renault Scenic and the Skoda Enyaq. There is better news when it comes to self-driving tech though. So there are various packages you can add to the Model Y to increase the level of automation. But even as standard, you get something called autopilot. So all I do is I double tap this right stalk behind the steering wheel, and that engages adaptive cruise control, so it keeps me a safe distance from the car in front and also steers me in the center of my lane. You have to keep your hands on the steering wheel, of course, but it does a really good job, far better than the equivalent systems in a lot of rivals. Okay, so we've just come off the M40. We are taking a slightly more scenic route to Bicester via the Chilterns, and that gives me a good opportunity to talk about handling. So the good news is that it is better than the ride comfort that this car offers, which along this road is still terrible. And this car does stay fairly upright by electric SUV standards when you're going around corners, and also it offers quite a lot of grip. The problem is the steering is quite quick for what's quite a tall SUV. It makes the Model Y feel a little bit nervous and edgy when you're driving along winding roads like this. And also the steering is ridiculously heavy unless you choose the lightest setting on the touchscreen here. And that really robs you of any sense of connection with the front wheels. So this isn't a car that's fun or rewarding to drive on twisty country roads. And if you do want something that will put a bit more of a smile on your face, then I would suggest looking at the Kia EV6. Now we are on an efficiency run, of course, so I'm not going to do a 0-60 run, but what I can tell you is this car is quite a lot slower than the all-wheel drive long-range version of the Model Y. That can do 0-60 in 4.8 seconds. In this rear-wheel drive version, you'll be waiting just under 6 seconds because, of course, it only has one electric motor rather than two. But still, that is plenty fast enough for what's a family SUV after all. It's just that you don't get quite the brutal kick that you do from a lot of Teslas when you put your foot down hard. If that's something that's appealing to you, then you might want to consider the all-wheel drive version, or perhaps even the range-topping performance, which can do 0-60 in less than 4 seconds. Right, we are here at Bicester Village, and before I get some lunch, let's just take a quick look at this interior, because to be honest, not much has changed since this car was first launched in the UK a few years ago. So you've still got this really minimalist design, very few buttons. And that means to do things like adjusting the steering wheel or the door mirrors, you have to use a combination of this touchscreen here and these scroll wheels on the steering wheel. So it's a bit of a faff, but at least it's not something you're going to be doing on a regular basis. You will always, though, have to look at this screen to see what speed you're doing, because the speedo is up here in the corner, and also you have to look at it for sat-nav directions, because unlike pretty much every other rival, there is no digital display here behind the steering wheel, and there is no head-up display on the windscreen either. On the plus side, this 15-inch touchscreen, it's really bright, it's quick to respond. As you can see, the graphics on there are very sharp, and you get over-the-air updates from Tesla. So sometimes you'll log in and you'll see that the design of the operating system has changed slightly, and other times you'll just notice there's a new feature that's popped up. So that's really, really good. The only thing you don't get is smartphone mirroring, because that isn't available on any Tesla. So you can't have Apple CarPlay and you can't have Android Auto. It's not a huge deal because there are apps for Apple Music, Amazon Music and Spotify, but it is something worth bearing in mind because, as I say, the Model Y is not available with any form of smartphone mirroring. Now, quality is something that we've criticised Tesla for in its early days actually, but things have improved notably. This is not as classy inside as a Genesis GV60 or an Audi Q6 e-tron, but it is a step above a Hyundai Ioniq 5 or even a Peugeot E3008 actually, because you've got some nice soft touch materials on the dashboard, on the insides of the doors. There is stitched leather across the center console, and everything actually feels quite solid too. And if you don't like this black and wood effect colour scheme, then don't worry, because you can pay extra to have white seats and a white face on the dashboard instead. Anyway, storage, there is loads of it. There is a massive cubby under this central armrest here. There are two cup holders, as you can see, just in front of that. Further forward in front of it, there is another storage tray that's lidded, and that's useful for throwing cables or anything else you want to keep out of sight. And if you're wondering what this design here is all about, well, it is actually two wireless phone charging pads. So I can just pop my phone there and charge it when I'm driving along without needing to plug it in. On top of that, you've got some decent sized door bins. So all in all, you are really well catered for when it comes to storage in the front of the Model Y. But what's it like in the back? Now, the rear seats in the Model Y are really roomy actually. As you can see, I've got loads of space for my feet. I have plenty of knee room and even headroom. For someone of my height, I'm just over 6 feet tall. This seat in front is in my driving position and I'm absolutely fine. I can even recline these rear seat backs if I want a slightly more laid back seating position. So overall, far, far better in the back than a Peugeot E3008 or even a Renault Scenic. There is also a flat floor down here, so no hump for the central passenger to straddle. And because I've got this huge single piece of glass above my head, that lets loads of light inside and generally it feels really light and airy back here. There are a couple of minor complaints though, so as you can see, there are air vents for the rear passengers down here, but there is no way of controlling the air conditioning back here. So if I'm feeling a bit chilly, I need to speak to someone sitting in the front and ask them to turn the temperature up. It's the same story if I want to switch on the heated seats. Unusually, all 3 seats in the back here are heated, so it's not just the outer 2, the middle passenger is catered for, but again, I'll need to speak to the driver or the front passenger to switch these on. The other minor complaint is the length of these seat bases. As you can see, they're quite short. If they're a bit longer, I would be more comfortable on a long journey, but overall, certainly one of the best cars in the class.
Now, what about the next generation Model Y that's due to arrive next year? Well, there are lots of rumours floating around, but it's almost certainly going to be a heavily revised version of the car we're driving here. In fact, the overhaul will probably be similar to the one given to the Model 3 at the end of last year. These aren't images of the finished production car. There are artists' impressions of what we expect the Model Y to look like based on a series of spy shots we've seen. These suggest improved aerodynamics, which should help the Model Y deliver even better efficiency and also give it a longer range. It also looks like there will be a light bar across the rear end. Tesla isn't expected to make drastic changes to the battery and charging system. The Model Y's 250 kilowatt maximum charging rate is still one of its strong suits, although the top-rung performance version is likely to receive a significant power boost to take the fight to the new electric Porsche Macan Turbo. Inside, we expect to see some more upmarket materials, along with the redesigned center console and 8-inch rear infotainment screen from the latest Model 3.
But here are 3 things we'd change about the Model Y and 3 things we wouldn't if we were in charge at Tesla. We'd add more supportive seats because these ones, they're okay when you're going in a straight line, but bigger side bolsters would hold you in place better when you're going around corners. We wouldn't change the boot because, as you can see, it is absolutely massive and there is loads more storage space below this main boot floor here. There is even further storage space under the bonnet, something that Tesla calls a frunk. We would definitely improve ride comfort. It's always been a weakness of the Model Y, and this long-range rear-wheel drive version is particularly annoying. We wouldn't carry over the indicator buttons on the steering wheel that debuted on the facelifted Model 3 last year because they are fiddly and there is nothing wrong with a good old-fashioned stalk. We'd also add a 7-seat option. That has been available in America for quite a while now, but it has never made it to the UK, and it would add some extra flexibility to the Model Y. A 6-seat option has been rumoured, and that would be fine too. We also wouldn't raise the price. Some other manufacturers have been particularly aggressive with the pricing of their electric SUVs recently, including Renault. So if anything, Tesla might want to consider cutting the price of the Model Y, something it did when it launched the heavily facelifted Model 3 a few months ago. Right, we're at Brent Cross. This is plugged in. We've done 131 miles today. So let's get it back up to 80% and crunch some numbers.
Now, this version of the Model Y can officially charge at speeds of up to 250 kilowatts. So in ideal conditions, you'll be waiting around 27 minutes for a 10 to 80% top up. That isn't always the case though. Our 29% to 80% charge at the Brent Cross superchargers took 29 minutes and 42 seconds. That's partly because those charging points can deliver a maximum of only 150 kilowatts. Many other supercharger locations can pump out up to 250 kilowatts, but your actual charging time varies depending on lots of factors, such as the temperature of the battery. Although on this trip, we did precondition the battery before arriving for our final charging stop. Nevertheless, unrestricted access to Tesla's supercharger network is a big reason to choose the Model Y, and you can normally expect fast, reliable charging with no faffing around with phone apps or contactless cards. You just plug in and the fee comes out of your bank account automatically. But what about the efficiency of this new long-range rear-wheel drive version on our journey? Well, the car's trip computer showed an average of 276 watt-hours per mile, which translates to 3.6 miles per kilowatt-hour. However, the final charge back up to 80%, the level of the battery when we started the trip, pulled 43 kilowatt-hours from the grid. Given that the trip was 131 miles, that works out to a more disappointing average of 3 miles per kilowatt-hour. Although that figure does factor in charging losses, something that all electric cars suffer from, and the rainy weather certainly didn't help matters. Anyway, let's talk about the price of this car because it costs £46,990. That's £6,000 less than the all-wheel drive version of the Long Range Model Y and only £2,000 more than the entry-level rear-wheel drive version, which is expected to be dropped pretty soon. So on paper, this new version is a no-brainer if you're buying a Model Y, and it comes with loads of standard equipment. But although the Model Y might be the best-selling car that Tesla makes, it isn't the best. The Model 3 is cheaper, it's more efficient, and it's much better to drive. So unless you really need the extra practicality that the Model Y offers, that's where our money would go. Thanks for watching, and let us know what you think of the Model Y in the comments below, and what you'd like to see when the new Juniper version arrives next year. If you'd like to watch another video, just click one of the links on the left-hand side.